everyone, and good whatever moment of this wonderful day you are enjoying on your time zones. It's always such a joy and such a privilege to welcome you into our Hacking HR conversations. And today we are going to talk about ethical considerations in the augmented workplace, and we will be talking specifically about privacy and bias. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co-host for the next hour. We have Jessa taking care of us backstage and keeping us safe from all things tech and logistics. And I would just love to take a few seconds to welcome everybody in the audience who just jumped on the link. And if you can help us, maybe drop a few notes in the comments, maybe just let us know where you're connecting from. And this way, first, you help us know that we are up and running and we are live and you can see us, you can hear us. And also, you will help us travel vicariously around the world. We have an amazing lineup of speakers. So, Jessa, if you can just bring them on stage, that would be wonderful. And we have the first good morning from Orange, Massachusetts. Thank you so much, Andrew. And while we are getting used to seeing our faces next to each other, what I will do, I will encourage everybody in the audience to use the comments generously. Please know that this is as much your conversation space as it is ours on the screen. And whenever you drop questions, you help us make this conversation even more relevant for you. And even more so when you drop comments and your own stories and your own takes and opinions and reflections on the topic, you do help this community to grow and learn and stay curious, not furious. So thank you everybody for taking the time and the curiosity to be here. And I will try to make the most out of our time today. And let's kick it off. You know the drill. I will pass the e-mic around as you appear on my screen clockwise. And I will ask you to first shortly introduce yourself. So tell us a little bit about you. But also tell us what makes this particular topic personally meaningful to you. Why is it that you saw the Google Doc that Enrique sends and spreads the joy, and you were like, oh, I'm going to be on that one? So, Shonika, it's wonderful to have you on my screen. Welcome.
Thank you for having me this morning. It is wonderful to be able to participate in, I think, a very important topic and discussion that impacts everyone professionally and personally, which is why I'm here today. So from someone that has personally experienced a data privacy breach, I bring my experience to my organization and apply that organizational wide to make sure that we are all feel safe and secure.
Thank you. There was a small hiccup with your audio, Shanika. I don't know if it was just me and my internet is unstable or anyone else experienced, but I think we didn't hear the last couple of words in what you just shared.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Perfect. I was just basically saying that it's my private experience with having experienced a breach, that I bring that to my organization to challenge our practices and making sure that we are adopting the right technology, et cetera, into the workplace so that people feel not only protected outside of the job, but also internally as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. And yes, audio is perfect now. There was just a small glitch in the matrix there for a few seconds. Gina, wonderful to see you again. And like you mentioned in the comments, it's been quite a while.
It has been really too long. But I'm delighted to be here and to meet, to see you again and to meet the others on this panel, an amazing group. My interest in this topic comes from the fact that, many years ago, I used to work for IBM and was lucky to be in a situation where we were using Watson AI at the time. IBM was the leader at the time. And the things that I learned about that had to do with bias, the opportunity, I should say, for bias, if AI is not used responsibly, is why I have a particular interest in this topic.
Thank you. And storyteller extraordinaire, Sundari, good to have you on my screen again.
Yeah, lovely to be here. and such bright smiles for this very important topic. So, really happy. I'm a business and organizational consultant and a business storytelling coach, which is what Minola keeps reminding me about my role. I think in my previous avatar, having been in finance and operations, and then now being an entrepreneur, I work with leaders and teams to help them drive business outcomes. And am I freezing?
No, not
Okay.
not to us. I
Okay.
see, yeah, I see nodding on the screen, not to us.
Okay, great. So I help leaders and teams drive business outcomes and be more human at work using storytelling. So that's my thing on how, while the best way to predict the future is to build it together, how can we add artificial intelligence to human intelligence and be more human at work while being, digital to the fore? We still stay human to the core. That's my interest in this topic.
Thank you so very much. Davina, wonderful to have you with us in this conversation.
Exciting to be here. Exciting to be here. Well, I've got to say, I think the first reason why I'm here is I got to see many of the speakers that are here today, either on LinkedIn or either at other Hacking HR presentations. And I said, I want to be a part of that if I get the opportunity. But even if I don't, I want to be able to listen to them and build a connection with these people because and what we do, the more connections, the better, because especially as we're kind of walking into some new and uncharted territory, the more people that we have to share that with is better. But this topic in particular, my goal is to always bring the humanity into what we do. And I think with every new bit of technology, for me, it started kind of in the 90s, 2000s, going all the way up. Everybody's excited. We've got these things to maybe make things easier. But are we getting away from the things that make us really human, the human side? So as we're excited about this stuff, are we taking the time to say, how does this not only affect us as an organization? How does it affect our employees? How does it affect the people that are maybe doing business with us and that see us? And are we being ethical as we do that? So for me, that was the main reason, is for us to always pause and say, let's continue to bring the humanity to everything that we do, new or old.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Aisha, just like Davina shared, we've been dancing around each other on LinkedIn for a while. So it's really nice to see you on this panel now. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Much like Davina, I always love being here because I get to meet the coolest people, and I'm always walking away with intense learning. So it's also selfishly for me to kind of expand my own horizons. But I think this topic is particularly important because with the background that I have and the exposure that I've had, I have seen real people get impacted by this particular topic. And I think that being in HR, we are in a position of privilege where we can really bring this to the forefront. So people understand, how does it impact me in my day-to-day work? If I'm a recruiter or if I'm, just a team member, how does this impact me? This is clear. Surely this is a leadership issue, but that's not true. And then also, I think being able to give very practical advice, because everyone that I meet is very well-intentioned. Nobody wakes up in the morning like, today I'm going to be extra biased at work, but they just don't know how to do it. And I think bringing people like this together and having, all of us share our backgrounds and what we've seen, and then getting the same from the audience is really where the magic happens.
Thank you. And I do want to ask you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we will look back to Davina, because I had a facilitation hiccup and I let you get away without telling us something about you. So Aisha, and then we will look back to Davina.
Yeah. So my name is Aisha, and I have been in the HR space for a little over a decade. We're just gonna keep it there. I'm a mom of 2 boys. I think that's my proudest achievement. And I have been, like many people, thrown into the remote space. Thank you, COVID. And really just navigating it has been fun. I've also moved from my home in Dubai to the United States. So I've been experiencing the remote working, expat life, mom life all together. And it's just been a really fun adventure.
Thank you, Aisha, for sharing that with us. And Davina. Tell us a little bit about Davina.
I think we thought we were going to escape, right, and just like not have to share. No, I'm just kidding. I'm glad to. So my name is Davina Bernal. It said Vargas, but it's Bernal. I was recently married. I'm a mother of two. I have a son who's a freshman in college, a daughter who's a sophomore in college because they are only 10 months apart. I don't know what I was doing there, but I got it out the way. I got my two babies, and right now I'm a global director of DEI and culture for a company based out of San Francisco. Very lucky to be there. Been there for about 3 years. Before that, I was with a startup based out of Boston for about 3 years. And before remote was remote, I was at my previous company remotely. Before that, at a retail company in the HR sector for a little bit over 2 years. And that is probably a little bit about me. But I think just like everybody else, I think we were probably champions for DEI and for inclusion and for things like that before it was actually a thing. I would say it was always a thing before maybe it was a thing out loud. And so that's just been a part of what I've done. So it's exciting to be a part of this and continue that.
Thank you all so very much for being here. And I was going through the comments. I see we have quite a diverse audience. And only if I look at the screen, I know Sundari is based in Hong Kong. All of you across the US, but with diverse cultural backgrounds. I host you from Basel in Switzerland. So I would really, really encourage everyone. I would expect quite a lot of cultural nuances to enrich our conversations. So again, use the comments, use the chat, and whenever you can give this additional dimension to our conversation, that would be absolutely wonderful. Before we jump very, very deep into the specifics of the topic, I would really invite all of you, maybe let's take a couple of minutes and outline the space of our conversation. What is augmented workplace? So a bit of a context from my end. Last week, there was the World Management Agility Forum in Lisbon, and we had a Hacking HR panel to discuss about agility and adaptability and AI in the new world of work. And people's feelings and thoughts and reactions were so fluid on a spectrum, between terrified and infinitely inspired when it comes to augmented workforce. So let's just take a few minutes. Where are you between terrified and inspired? And what prompts your thoughts and your feelings and your reactions to the new reality that I wanted to say we go towards, but I think we're already in it. And I won't give the e-mic, so we will also consider this the rehearsal for the unmuting competition. So wherever inspiration strikes, just jump in and build your conversation. Let's see who's good with the unmute. Gina, you're our pioneer today.
Yeah, well, I would be remiss if I didn't jump into this one because I've been thinking a lot about it over this weekend in particular. And the simple reason is that I have been a longtime LinkedIn member. Love LinkedIn. It's the only social media platform that I use reliably. And I was so disappointed to discover that LinkedIn had made the decision to announce, sort of not to announce, I should say, to make the decision that they would now be scraping the data, my data, from my LinkedIn account and using it within AI. That wasn't shocking that they would want to do that. What was shocking was that they didn't announce it overtly. It was done in a passive manner. And so I learned about it like most people learned about it from talking to other AI experts. And I immediately went in on Friday and changed my privacy settings. So what the other part of that was that they had already been scraping, right? So all of those, collaborative articles and different things that people have been contributing to, they've already been scraping it. So that really got me to thinking more about the personal aspect of this conversation this weekend, about how I felt violated. And so where do I stand on that spectrum? I stand solidly in the middle, where I'm encouraged by all the things that this technology could conceivably do to make organizations and individuals more productive and maybe even more creative and innovative. But I am profoundly disappointed and very concerned that those who have the power, to control those technologies are showing us very early on that they're only acting in self-interest. And of course, that means that I think for leaders of organizations, you've got to be careful not to do things like this because they immediately destroy any trust that you've already built.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that hits close to home to many people. Sundari.
Yeah. Can you hear me well?
Yes, all is good. If there's something, I will let you know. I know
there's
how to
something
reach
happening
you.
at my end, so that's fine. I'll continue.
We go agile, not fragile. So just go on.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's just watching organizations, and I'm so with Gina and about the same issue. Also found out just randomly through because somebody posted about it, about the privacy settings, and we all went scrambling and somebody finding out where is the privacy setting button and what we need to do. So I think organizations are also at the same time sitting on the seesaw and trying to find that balance. So, just for example, in adopting generative AI, organizations feel like, at least it feels like, they're pushing the accelerator to the floor while working on the engine at the same time. So, there is that urgency to do both. And obviously, with the urgency, there is lack of clarity and then the missteps which are coming. And we all heard about the nonprofit eating disorder organization, NIDA, which found out that it replaced a 6-person helpline team and 20 volunteers with a chatbot called Tessa. And Tessa went on to having to be disabled because the chatbot was giving harmful advice that could really make eating disorder worse. And this is just one of the many mishaps. So, really looking at, for me, how can we have that framework, have some freedom within the framework, have the innovation, but keep the human in the loop, put the guardrails there, work together, not assume that just because something is a fancy word, it's AI, we are all getting glittery eyed about it and trying to launch it. And sometimes even take the lazy route out, pardon me for saying that, to say, oh, that's AI and the AI will do it. AI is not that magic wand. Let's step back and see where's the accountability, where's the technology taking us, is it being tested, what are the good use cases that come, and and with that, not just bias, not just privacy, but all the bias issues that can happen. Let's just take a step back and look at it and keep the human very much in the loop. And I think that's the lens that I'm really struggling to work with personally and professionally, in terms of I want this new shiny toy, but I don't know where it's taking me.
Yes. Bias is something that has been around for a long time, right? So I see it as a privilege to be a Black woman in HR, where I happen to be able to pull back the curtain, test our practices, influence changing our practices so that we are fair and equitable when it comes to hiring, promoting, and also career pathing individuals within the organization. And I do a lot of research on AI because if you think about AI, it's built on the foundation of data. And if your data is not clean, that is information that is being adapted and adopted by AI and providing you with information that decisions are being made on. So for me, it's about data cleansing first and making sure that we have the right data and we have oversight in providing people with the option to opt in and out of how we use the data. So for me, it's about being transparent in the why. I think a lot of good things can come out of AI in terms of being able to analyze data. But when it comes to cultural competence, AI can't do that. AI doesn't have emotional intelligence. So with that said, when we have AI, we have to make sure the human side that we're talking about today is still present to be able to detect those biases and be able to commit to understanding them and making a change. So for instance, relative to performance, if you're using AI to help with performance, make sure that you are clear on what those algorithms are measuring so that people know, have full awareness, so that there are no surprises. So the same thing that we used to do before AI, which is understanding your role, having conversations with people, make sure that they understand the usage, and let them know that this is new for everyone. So we don't have all of the answers, but we do commit to measuring, testing, and being fair, and communicating the results and having their buy-in in terms of whether they want to participate in that or not.
Yeah, I want to add on to that, and really to everybody who has spoken. And I think even some of the stuff that we are seeing in the chat, I would say that I'm right in the middle. I'm excited about it. I think it's great that we have this new tool, but also I want to remind people not to be completely complicit and complacent. When we get these things, what I find is that we're not always going back and checking the source, right? And I think Shaniqua just said it. When we're talking about data, who is actually checking it? When people say, oh, I got this from ChatGPT, I was able to cut my day down now by 2, 3, 4 hours. Okay, but are we sure that even that information is correct? What is your double checks? What is your checks and balances? And I saw in the chat earlier where it said, hey, look, I'm excited for this technology and for the tool, but I'm more concerned for the people that are maybe using it and for what the organizations will do with it, because very slowly, and I think Gina really spoke to it with what's happening with LinkedIn, is we're seeing people kind of take things and get information and present it as the truth. Hey, well, I got this, I scraped this information, I'm going to go ahead and present it to you. And how often are we, seeing and hearing from folks, where'd you fact check that? How do we know it's true? Where'd you get this information? And we're seeing a lot of that come up in major ways. And so for me, it's really being in the middle and being excited about it, but also challenging people that work maybe with and for you on, hey, where are you getting it? What are you doing as a checks and balances? Why are we complacent with everything that it says? It doesn't mean everything has to be let's go and march and fight against everything status quo. But if we present this as a source of truth, are we putting our stamp and our name on it? And if we are, what kind of, checks and balances are we going through to make sure that it's true? And that's why these are important.
Yeah, I think I echo what everyone else is saying. I'm in the middle. I think that any place where there's, machines and humans working together, that's what it means to me. And I think that we need to recognize that this is a tool to enhance our performance and do things better. It isn't something that we should completely rely on. My big areas are, when I see this, I really have to push back and question, what are we using this for? Not everything needs, this is not something to fix all processes and procedures and technologies. Like, we have certain things that work. Let's continue to do that if we need to. I think using that moment to kind of be the voice of reason in the room to say, okay, well, but why are we doing this? Or why are we doing it that way? Is important. And then I think also, I think it was Shaniqua who mentioned, that having that transparent algorithm shared with the organization is something that we need to advocate for. I also think that we need to advocate, depending on how technologically advanced your organization is or how deep it is in terms of creating the technology and implementing it, how diverse are these data sets that are being used to create these outcomes or these reports or whatever it is that you're using it for. And then finally, and much like we're doing here, involving a diverse team to say, yeah, we agree with that, or we don't, or yes, we're going to use it in this manner or not, and having that transparency and the various voices. And that's kind of why we advocate for diversity, not just to say we do it, but to say, hey, we want all the thoughts and all the ideas and all the backgrounds to look at things, because we all have blind spots, regardless of how great your technology is.
This round of insights reminded me of a panel, I think about a couple of months ago, or recently. Let's go with recently. And one of the panelists said that we're talking about comp and ben and data checking. And she said, it always comes down to check my math, but trust my logic. And just as I was listening to all of you, that popped up in my mind. Now, the next one is a bit more actionable. If we look at all the ethical considerations that you see unfolding around you within organizations, I would really love to hear with real life as transparently as possible sharing. What are some of the approaches to the ethical considerations that really give you hope and trust and inspiration and energy within the workplaces? So, what gives you signs that maybe there is a close to utopia scenario waiting for us? And Shanika, I would invite you to be the first one to lead us into this.
Thank you. Thank you. So with me, ethics is very important in everything that we do. It fosters trust, right? So that's one thing for me that in terms of building trust within an organization is paramount, not only with my direct team members, but organizational wide. So making sure that when it comes to ethics, that is the fingerprint amongst everything that we do, that we have a why and a how we do it. And also to provide people with that training. So what does ethics mean relative to your business function? How does it impact it when it's violated? And providing, we've actually just recently implemented an ethics hotline. So having a outlet for people, if you see something, say something, you have a question about it, to ask. So that's what we do in our own organization.
Thank you. Who would like to build on that? Davina.
I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind going behind her, even though she always does an amazing job. So then you're just kind of like, let me pull out some of my good stuff and see what else I have. But following up on that, I would say the same thing, but I would add on to that, really making sure that bias training is woven into the fabric of what we do. I think a lot of companies out there, and I'm sure everybody here probably in the comments would speak to it too, are just buying, let's say, privacy policies and standard, cut rate things from, different, I would say the different organizations out there who are building them, right? You've different law firms and things like that, where it's one size fit all. You just put your name on it. And now this is what your company believes in. And instead of really getting to the heart and root of what your core values are as a company, what you're really going to stand for, what you're really going to put your name behind. So building bias training, really building ethics training into the heart of everything that you do and really living it. And if you're not doing that, what are you doing to hold your managers on every level accountable? Your leaders on every level accountable, whether or not they're overseeing a team of people. So that is where I would say, it gives me hope, is that at least I feel like at the company where I'm at and other companies I've been at, when you see something that appears to be out of whack, you can get with partners on your people teams, your HR teams, and on your leadership teams and say, let's take another look at this. And I think that for most places, we've barely even scratched the surface. And it's okay to say, I want to challenge what we are normally doing and use maybe something else, because what we did before might not work in this climate. And I think that'll be true for most of us. Most places bought a lot of the things they use from law firms because they just want to kind of safeguard themselves, let's say, from a lawsuit. So you want to make sure that you have all the legalese and everything, make sure you dot all the I's and that it says this here. But what are you really doing to challenge what is happening on a day-to-day basis? So for us, it's weaving it into the fabric. It's also making sure that there are follow-ups with leaders. What does your leadership training plan look like? Do you have one? Do your leaders meet frequently? How often? Quarterly, yearly, biannual, to follow up on trainings? And then whatever training you have, besides your basic sexual harassment and things like that, when you're talking, are you using the right kind of language? Right? Are you following up on the things that you discussed prior and previously? That is what I would say gives me hope, is that we're doing that. We're making it important.
Because I'm an organizational psychologist, I cannot help but come at it from this perspective. And one of the things that really gives me hope is that the Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology has been on the forefront, not just as an organization of researchers and practitioners like myself, but also working with the federal government. The federal government has a task force that is focused on AI. And so our contribution, meaning the society's contribution, is we've for example, published some very specific guidelines about the considerations that leaders and HR leaders should think about as you choose the tools that you're going to purchase and use, particularly for making hiring, promotion decisions, because all of those decisions that we never perfected, even if we didn't have AI, we still haven't perfected how to do hiring and selection of people in a way that is fair and unbiased, and it's done in a way that we make sure the people we hire are the ones who are best fit for the job, rather than the ones that we just sort of liked the most when we were evaluating them. And so what SIOP is saying is that since we didn't know how to do this well, we shouldn't think that when we put AI on top of that, that the decisions that we're making now on the basis of AI-driven hiring decisions, we shouldn't assume those are better. What we should do is think about what are the criteria that we would have to consider of any kind of AI tool to make sure that it minimizes bias. So not just training and teaching leaders about bias, but understanding the composition of the data that's going into these tools. Because as we've talked already about the fact that, garbage in, garbage out. But it is one thing when we're talking about our own data within our organizations and it's our garbage. It's another thing when we're buying a tool that has garbage in it and we don't know what the garbage is, because the tools are not often transparent. The publishers of the tools say, we've got this wonderful thing, and they don't provide a lot of evidence. But one thing that gives me hope, which was your question, is that those of us who are in the business of trying to help leaders think about these things are already guiding them to think about understanding what it is that you're buying before you buy it. And if you're using your own data, if your data has not got a representative sample of people in it, whether we're talking about that on the basis of race, gender, or anything else, and you try to use that data to then make decisions about the products that you're going to build or the services that you're going to offer, what you will often discover is that you're putting bias now into the product and service, because the decisions you make about the product and service will not be representative, and therefore the product and service will not be attractive to a diverse clientele or customer base.
Thank you. Sundari.
There's so much of what you say, so much connects, because it's like totally, I think this is one of the first things I learned when I started learning computing in high school, which was garbage in, garbage out. And I think to suddenly expect AI to be that magic wand again, that it'll cleanse all the biases, it'll come up with intelligent decisions. And I think that's where the word itself, the fact that it's not intelligent by itself, it's the human intelligence which augments it. It's just helping us with certain set of data to prune it, work on it better. So I think from a leadership perspective, I think we need to understand that we want to build intelligence that augments human capabilities. So it's not a human versus machine, as most of the time sometimes it's put out as, but how can we keep the human gifts of creativity, of empathy, of emotion? And to your point about, all the biases which were there before in hiring, it's not that AI is coming and brushing it away. It's getting built in. So how can we now make better decisions by ourselves and not rely as the tool which is going to the be it all tool? The second thing, of course, as leaders, it's all about building trust with people, with our dealings. And the same thing goes with technology. How can we build trust directly into technology? Back to that whole privacy point and LinkedIn thing. How can you have something which just opts you in randomly and says that now you have to opt out? It should be a opt in by yourself, not by opt in by the system. So how do you influence and infuse technology with trust? So it protects your privacy, it protects transparency, builds in that security. And thirdly, I think really technology needs to be built inclusive for everyone. So it needs to serve humans of different culture, of races, nationality, economic status. And I really like one particular organization in India, which works with a lot of the rural poor who are recording their local language as a data testing set. And a lot of times when people do that, they don't get paid their due. But this organization is working with the poor who are doing these, lending their voices to train AI to get their fair wages. So there is something that can happen even in a situation where you're feeding data. How can you be more human? How can you be mindful of how you're doing this? And I think organizations, definitely human resources groups, can work more at it. Not use this as a crutch, not make the lazy solution, but really question and use it to flex and come out even better.
Mm. Aisha.
Yeah, I'm just my mind is blown. I'm so wowed by my fellow panelists and their insights. What gives me hope is that we're having this discussion. Other than all of the federal regulations that are coming out, which I think are so needed. Also, there are a bunch of ESG regulations that companies are now being held to, and quite frankly, the people are being loud about what they want and what they will and will not purchase and will not agree to. So that's that aside. I think from a practical day-to-day perspective, why I wake up in the morning and I'm like, yep, I got this, is when you dive into it. It's not that scary. I am not a data scientist, but I have led programs and projects that have had very complicated AI powering the back end. And so what I mean by it's not complicated is that what I tell my leadership and people is that when you go into an organization and you're trying to kind of create this culture that is adopting AI and using it responsibly, you have to do a couple of things. One is you have to ensure the foundation is there. So somebody mentioned unconscious bias. Somebody mentioned sexual harassment. You'll be surprised by the amount of times I have gone into companies and seen that they do not have a written sexual harassment policy, or they do not have policies around what happens if you are discriminated against. Everybody kind of knows it, but it's not written. So making sure that you have the foundations kind of built before you drive on the road. And then consistency. Sometimes we have clients or leadership that want to have this big bang. They're all about it. And they're like, we got to make this huge and it's so important. And it's like, hang on. We can do a few big things, but we need to be sending the message consistently. And what I mean is, you have your policy rollouts, which people become aware of, and you have an awareness campaign throughout the year. And then you can have coffee chats, which talk about this. And then you can have training programs. And then, so it's a multi-pronged approach to developing this culture around responsible AI usage and responsible behavior within that organization. And then you really have to think about, how are we rewarding the behavior that we want to see? And how are we encouraging people not to do certain things? So if you have ethics committees, and if you have policies in place, but then you have people with very horrible behavior or practices, and it's kind of like an unspoken kind of, yeah, we know it happens, but it's fine. No, it's not. So you really do have to have leadership that has a backbone and that is willing to commit. And it creates an environment in which people know, okay, it is okay for me to speak up. It is okay for me to point out when something is going well and say, awesome job. Or it's okay for me to say, no, that's not going okay. And that's not right. It goes against our values. So I think there's no one magic pill in my view, but I am hopeful because I see that it is something that we can take into by little pieces, and we can all kind of work together to make it become a larger culture in which we are responsibly using AI.
Mm. We scratched a little bit on the topic of my next question. So this is why I'm pulling the mental post-it and addressing it now. What are some of the skills and capabilities that we should develop within the workplace, not just within the HR, that would ultimately help us navigate privacy and bias, and even as one of you mentioned, really create a culture of ethical awareness? So some skills and capabilities, and there are extra points for skills and capabilities that are not within the circle of the usual suspects. So something that we would not normally immediately associate with this, but definitely underpins navigating privacy and bias. And because we are already 10 minutes into the second half of our conversation, I will give you a few extra seconds to think about and go for the additional points. Just welcoming everybody who joined a little bit later. And for those of you who missed a bit of the beginning, or you need to drop off and miss the ending, don't worry, this is being recorded. And just anticipating some of the questions, you can watch the recording or recommend it straight from the same link on LinkedIn. Check your privacy settings. Or from our hackinghrlab.io. And Aisha, you so graciously took the hot seat of going last. I want to break that pattern and invite you to lead us into this part.
Well, thank you so much. No pressure. No, I think honestly, for me, again, I like to break things down and make them very simple. I think to move away from the usual suspects, obviously there has to be a lot of technical capabilities in certain teams that we have to ensure is going on. Usually that isn't the problem though. The challenge comes in that most of our people do not know how to read the data that they see. I think data literacy is extremely important. I teach my boys financial literacy and data literacy because I think that it empowers them. When we say, we want our people to speak up. Well, speak up about what? If I don't know what I'm reading, what am I going to speak up about? So that's one element. And then the other element is, and there is no magic pill for this one. If you have one, please let me know. But it is creating that culture of, I am not afraid to use my voice to call things out. And every organization is going to be different. So I think it's really diagnosing where you have a problem and getting the voices off the floor, and fixing that. Is it a issue of, people are afraid of speaking up because of retaliation or whatever it may be, but really delving deep and understanding, why am I not getting my people telling me like it is, basically, right? If you have a culture of engagement surveys that go out and never get listened to and never get implemented, your people have lost trust in you. So maybe the training for that one is to go back and build trust by creating implementation plans. And so my point is that it'll be different for every organization. And so it's not a copy paste, this is the solution, this is the training. But I think those two elements are so important in my view.
Thank you. Sundari.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is something that we are constantly grappling with. We want to use the best of technology. We want to make our lives better. We want to enrich lives. We want to be transparent. We want to have reliable systems. But at the base of it all, business leaders still need to build a foundation of trust with whoever their stakeholders are. They still need to build authentic relationships in communication and public engagement, and they need to communicate their intentions and goals in a way that it can get support. And in today's AI powered world, they must first understand what are the potential benefits and risks and how it fits into the business strategy first before they can garner the support. And I just feel that human side of just diving into some of this and looking at it from the eyes of impact is something that we should not lose. And I just feel that as missions get better, and they certainly will, humans can only be better versions of themselves. So there's even more greater need for human skills, things like empathy, things like the so-called soft skills, which I call as power skills. It's not about just removing repetitive tasks. It's not about looking at big data, taking away things. It's not about even higher level problem solving. So I think the antidote to all of this in some way is really being more human at work, looking at how are you building trust equations. And everybody talked about, how are you working with systems which are transparent, not grabbing that nearest software which is there, which could help you without looking at what is the technical portfolio that it offers. Have we checked out the technical report? Have we looked at what are the biases it's addressing or not? So really going deeper and using the human intelligence a bit more while we are playing around with AI. So while I want to say AI plus I think we are somehow sometimes forgetting that the humans have to lead. So it's really keeping the human in the loop and taking a leading role. And again, as a communications professional, this is where I feel we can't let others decide. It's not in the hands of the private bodies. It's not in the hands of governments. everybody needs to get involved. Everybody needs to have a say. You don't need to be a data scientist, to the point that somebody else was also saying. All of us have skin in the game, and we all need to get involved. We all need to find a way to drive this.
Where shall we take the e-mic? Who would like to follow in the energy of this? Tina.
Yeah, so I had a comment about this, which all of this is fantastic, and I'm really loving it. And I wanted to tell you a quick story. I have a young mentee who works for a global company, and the company is clearly testing her out and playing around with using AI to connect elements of data that have never been previously connected. So the long-term view is that this will be a win-win for the company in terms of efficiency and for the client, because then the people who talk to the clients will be able to get their answers more quickly. They will be more accurate. We'll all be singing out of the same playbook. All of that sounds wonderful. But what we've been discussing is how the company is going about this using all the same old behaviors that have turned people off. So not just behaviors about here's the main problem that we see. What we're seeing is that they have handpicked a few people in the company who are sort of in this inner circle of people who are in the know about what we're doing with AI. These are special people, right, that know about AI. They're on the forefront, which is the same behavior that we saw when other technologies came along, or whenever any goodies come along, right? And when you look at the people who are in the inner circle, it's always the same suspects, right? It's never the people who have traditionally not been included. And so as we think about this and we talk about this, we were like, well, what that's now doing is setting up another us versus them division in the organization. We know about us versus them because that's what we've been fighting forever, all of us, not people of a certain type. We know what us versus them feels like. And so the companies this company that is huge is already starting with the very same old behaviors of us versus them, the inner circle, only certain people knowing. When in fact, for this AI opportunity, what they have is the opportunity to do crowdsourcing on a massive scale. They can still have the one or two or three people that do whatever they do because they think they're special. But what if they opened up the problems of the organization and say, here are the top 3 things we're solving for. What do you think? Not just literally speaking up and telling your supervisor, because sometimes we know that when we speak up and tell our supervisors, we don't get credit, right? If we're thinking about this from a more macro inclusive perspective, what if we set up the opportunity to do some little projects? These are not projects where people are looking to get publicity and, pick 1 or 2 special people. We're looking for ideas, and you can play with Chat GPT or whatever you use, and then submit your idea, and let's see, because you know what? You're closer to the problem, you're closer to the customer. So as we talked about this example, I came to the conclusion, I started thinking about how I was seeing that being replicated in other places, in other things. Even with the LinkedIn example, that's clearly that, right? You just do what you want, and only with a few people, and then the rest have to come along with it. So, I do think there's this big opportunity when we think about, well, what are the skills that leaders need? Leaders need to really flex their empowerment skill. Most leaders are not good at this. It's another opportunity. I know that I think it was Sanditha who mentioned, and I can't see well, so I can't see the spelling of names. So I'm guessing here just on on sound. But this is where the empathy comes in. Because stop for a minute and think, how would I feel if I was working in that department and now all of a sudden I feel like, what's going on? Not just is it going to endanger my job, because I worry about that too. That's down the. I'm just worrying about, well, I'm not a part of it. And then the other thing, so I think there's all this stuff about empowerment and empathy that will be required for successful implementations of AI. And then the other thing I thought about is we've got to teach everybody to think strategically. What strategic thinking is all about making choices based on available information. And we traditionally only teach strategic thinking to people at the top of the house because we only think that they're the ones that need to think long term. But if you want me to work with AI effectively in the organization, especially since it's changing so rapidly, you probably ought to help me be an independent thinker so that I can understand the implications of the things I am doing in my little corner of the world, and then share those with everyone else to sort of broaden our understanding of what the heck is going on here.
I agree. Adding on to all the magic, I think, that we've heard from all the speakers, I'm going to also kind of build off of what I saw Bertan say in the comments. And it's something that I think I speak to a lot. I try to at least speak to a lot. A lot of times whenever we are talking about new tools or introducing new things or all these new ideas, it's really up to whatever our company's people team to do, right? Whoever's on your people team, whoever does like your HR, whoever does, your DEI, the inclusion work, different things like that. It's up to that team. And very rarely would I say we really see our executives speaking to it. I'm not speaking from personal knowledge. I'm saying from things that, of course, we've heard and we've seen. Our executive team sit back and they're letting maybe your people teams run with these and trusting that they are doing everything correctly and that it's the right way to go. And so we're just going to follow it. People team said that this is the right way to go. We're going to get behind it. But really shifting some of the responsibility onto our executives to make sure that whatever we are rolling out is done in a unified nature, not just because we said so, but because we are all going to commit to modeling it, to doing it, to standing behind it, to believing in it. And I believe that just from, of course, the things that I've seen online and through other groups and organizations, we don't see that a lot. We see a lot of really excited people teams talking about what this is going to do, and everybody get excited, and we're going to have some trainings and we're going to teach you how to do it. And you might not get that same thing from the executives, but imagine, I would say, the difference and how responsible I think companies might become if it's truly your CEO standing up there, right? If it's truly your CFO, your COO standing up there saying, this is what we're going to do. We 100% back it, believe in it. This is how we are going to implement it. And this is how we are going to stand behind it. And by the way, I am going to stand behind everybody on every level of this organization, from a brand new employee all the way up to our most tenured associate, if you are doing this. So I don't necessarily have a tool, but what I would say is if your executives are truly committing to everything that, let's say, your people team has always committed to, I think that that's where we might see some of this disconnect start to become bridged. Because when you know at the highest level, hey, as an employee, I can walk into the executive's office and I can say, okay, hey, I want to let you know that we are using some tools and I really feel like they are really biased. Can I have a few moments? And I know at big companies that might not always be the way, might be some gatekeepers or things like that, but is there a bridge? Is there an avenue? Is there something that we can do to where your lowest levels are being able to connect with the highest levels? I know Shaniqua talked about a hotline, different things like that. And then taking that a step further, where does it go after that? Right. Many of us have worked for companies where there are hotlines, things like that. Who does it go to? Is it going to your main HR rep? But then where does it go above that? Who's also being looped in to where, it just stop there, to where anytime there's something representing your company, it's truly representing the entire company. So that's something that I would say. And also, Bertan, I want to give you some on that as well. But that's what I would say. If it's up at your executive level, they're leading it, talking about it, saying that this is what we're going to do, I believe that that'll be a game changer.
Yeah, and if I could circle back to basically say you all had really great points on that. And I didn't reference before in the previous question of how I feel about it in terms of the enthusiasm. I think that we're in a culture and a space where there's a lot of things happening. So DEI, following the murder of George Floyd, was at the front and center of things. And I think we still have to harness those very reasons why we started to look at things differently in our approach to using AI, and ensuring that people feel safe, that they have information, that people know that they're not being replaced, but this is an opportunity to actually upskill our workforce. So to what Aisha was saying, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, in terms of being able to read the data. So being able to do deductive reasoning. What is the data telling us? Are we underrepresented in some areas? These are opportunities for people to lean in versus lean back when it comes to AI, and provide people with opportunity, because AI is a very vast space. So we have generative AI, we have special intelligence AI, there's coding that goes into AI. So these are opportunities for people that if you want to learn more, raise your hand so that we can find a way that we can incorporate your interests into using it responsibly, that we're being inclusive in terms of why we're using and getting people's feedback. So that leads into like when it comes to having committees, not just on ethics, but also having somebody, when you build committees, having diversity of thought in the room. So if that is not your lane, still invite other people to participate and learn. This is knowledge sharing. This is a way to cross collaborate. And it's also an opportunity to feel valued, seen, and heard. And I think that's one of the things that I've heard amongst my peers is making sure that we don't lose that human touch of making sure that people feel valued, that they feel seen and heard despite the inclusion or the implementation of AI. So people have competencies that they're in their job. They want to know that they're performing well. They want to contribute, and making sure that AI is not removing that opportunities for others.
Well, what you all just shared prompted me to go and quickly Google, because I wanted to do justice to the quote, something that went viral a little while ago. And it comes from author and video game enthusiast Joanna Maciejewska. Probably I mispronounced that terribly. And she said, "I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes." And I love the point that all of you made in some way, shape, or form, that it's what we use AI for and how we use AI that are equally essential, and they raise equally valid ethical considerations within the workplace. Now, I'm going to say something terribly painful, and that is that we are 4 minutes away from wrapping this panel up. I feel like we could go on for at least a couple more hours, but I'm sure that people in the audience enjoy this and they feel energized and inspired, and they want to put all this wonderful wealth of wisdom to good use. Now, punchline style, one sentence, medium length, so not short, but definitely not long. For those of us who sit here and say, "But I don't have a seat at the strategic table. I don't know what to do with all of this." What is one small thing that we can do, or how is one way in which we can show up in our everyday interactions that keeps this conversation going and makes us just do things a little bit more meaningfully to everybody around us? And what I will do, in the interest of time, I will pass the e-mic around counterclockwise. So Aisha, yet again, you will go first. And a few extra seconds for inspiration, just to thank every single person in the audience, either now enjoying us live or later on in the recording. Thank you for being here. Do keep this fundamental conversation going. Follow our panelists on LinkedIn. Keep dropping your comments, and just really make a difference around you. So, Aisha, what can we do? You're on mute. Yes.
Apologies. So what we can do practically is two things in my view. One, educate yourself where you feel like you have gaps. So you can at least speak the language and be included in that way, because that is your own, the onus is on you. And the second part of that is never underestimate the change that you can make by connecting with other people. And I think it was the Dalai Lama who said, if you think you're insignificant and make no difference, try sleeping in a room with a mosquito. So I really do believe there's a lot of power that you carry as an individual. And if you really want to make a difference, the way to do that is to understand where you are and what's going on around you, and educating yourself that way, and then making the time to connect with other people.
Thank you so very much. Davina.
Absolutely. I would say to people to stay active in groups like this. My HR role, the first HR role I had, I tell people this is not a secret, was one of the most horrible roles I had. Not because of the work, but because I was excited. I was new, I was fresh, I was young. I thought I was going to change the world, make a huge difference. And I found out very quickly that the people I was working with and working for and the executives were not that ethical and weren't doing the things that we were preaching to others to do. And so for a while, it was taking me down. I was starting to question the reason why I was doing things. But what always brought me back was staying active in groups like this, because if I couldn't make a huge difference, let's say among these executives and people like that, I was making a small difference with the people that I worked around. I was telling them the things still that weren't right. I was modeling the behavior. And up until the time that I left that company, I still had these great connections with people and with groups like this, to where maybe I'm not making the biggest difference as I want with this big organization, and these executives, but I am in teams like this, and together and combined, that is where we can see the difference. And take the space that you have and make it work for you. But above all, make sure that you are truly, as cliche as this sounds, leading the change, being the difference that you want to see, doing all of that great stuff. Because even if you're not sitting at that table, create one, build one, learn woodworking, make your own. It is possible to do.
Mm. And I absolutely love how you say all this in one breath, so that it feels like one sentence. So Sundari, next to you.
Yeah. I'm going back to what I started with, which is Alan Kay, the computer pioneer, who said the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And in today's AI context, stop predicting what the future will be like. Instead, create it in a disciplined way, in a principled way. Bring your ethics in, bring your discipline in, bring your transparency in, and build it and co create it. So don't be a bystander. Don't say tech is not for me. Don't say digital is not for me. So bring in the literacy, learn more about it, and be part of the solution.
Thank you. Gina.
And perfect segue, because my 2-word response is, and I will continue beyond for a little bit, is 3, actually: engage with it. These are Bill Gates's words. And while I don't necessarily agree with everything that Bill Gates does with regard to AI, the point is, be a part of it. And so the second thing I would just quickly say is, don't wait for your manager to train you on AI or to help you understand its implications. Think of this as an opportunity for self-development, and that you can control it 100%.
Thank you. Shanika, bring
No
us home.
pressure. It was great participating today. And I'm going to wrap up with basically imploring that leaders lean in, learn every facet of the organization, understand the systems that you're purchasing, how they integrate, how they talk, where there's gaps. Ask for reports, ask for subject matters to lean in and provide you with the data so that you can make decisions. And also, as everyone said earlier, Davina, model what you want to see. Raise your hand, see something, say something, get involved. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Thank you all.
Thank you so very much, everyone. Those of you on my screen, everybody in the comments, thank you for being here. Thank you, Jessa, for taking care of us. And do keep an eye on our space. And tomorrow we have an amazing conversation around reimagining HR processes, hosted by one of my amazing colleagues at Hacking HR. And I hope I will get to welcome you many times in the future. Thank you, and continue to do art and writing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.